Somewhere between the day you just lived and the sleep waiting to take you, there is a frequency. You won't find it on any dial. It doesn't broadcast on a schedule. It comes when the hour is late and the lights are low, and you are ready to go somewhere without leaving where you are. This is the midnight frequency. What follows are radio dramas, some set in the smoky, rain-soaked world of the old golden age, where private detectives walked dark streets and every shadow had a secret. Some take place closer to now, some venture further out, into times and places that haven't happened yet. All of them are original stories, written in the spirit of the programs that once kept the whole country listening in the dark. From this moment forward, there are no interruptions, no commercials, nothing to pull you back. If you found something here worth returning to, we'd be grateful for your support. The details are in the show notes, but that's for later. Right now, there is only the story. Get comfortable. Let it come.
There's a kind of client who comes up the stairs slow, not because the stairs are steep, but because every step is money she doesn't have. I heard Lucia Fiore before I saw her in May of 1948, and when she came through the door of my office, she was holding her handbag with both hands the way you hold a thing when everything you've got left is inside it. She put $4 on my desk in ones. It was grocery money. I'd have known that even if I couldn't smell the onions on the bills, because a woman with real money sends a lawyer, and a woman with no money sends herself. Her boy Danny was 19, and Danny was gone. 3 days gone, and the neighborhood already had the story worked out, because the neighborhood always does. Danny Fiore ran collections for Mickey Dane, who books horses out of the back of a cigar store on North Broadway. And on Saturday, the biggest collection day of the meet, Danny and a leather satchel with a week of Hollywood Park receipts in it both stopped existing at the same time. The arithmetic wrote itself. Kid plus satchel minus kid equals thief. Mickey's people were looking for him, so I'd heard were the police, on account of a liquor store on the route that got its window broken the same afternoon, which was the kind of coincidence the cops like to staple to a name that's already in trouble. My Danny didn't steal, she said, and I want you to understand she didn't say it the way mothers usually say it, with the fear leaking through the paint. She said it like a fact she'd checked twice. He called me Saturday night, 10 seconds. He said, "Mama, don't believe what they tell you and don't tell anybody I called," and then he hung up. A thief calls for money, Mr. Malone. Or he doesn't call at all. He called to tell me not to believe them. That's not a thief. That's a witness. I've had law professors put arguments in front of me with less snap than that. I pushed 2 of the $4 back across the desk, told her $1 retains me and the second one's for expenses, and I kept the lie about my rate small enough to live with. Then I asked her the question that mattered. Who did Danny trust besides her? She thought about it the way careful people think, and she said, "Father Gutierrez at St. Anna's. Danny was an altar boy. The father never stopped treating him like one." I put that in my pocket and didn't touch it, because you don't walk in the front door of a thing until you know who's watching the street. First, I went to see Mickey Dane, which sounds like a bad idea, and it was, but it's the kind of bad idea that pays. If Danny was a witness and not a thief, then somebody inside Mickey's operation had a week of receipts and a 19-year-old kid to hang it on, and I wanted to look at the faces while everybody still thought I was just a private cop doing a mother's errand. The cigar store on North Broadway sells maybe a box of cigars a month, all to people who don't smoke them. In the back, there's a counting room with a table, a telephone, an adding machine, and the general atmosphere of a bank that never got around to the charter. Mickey Dane turned out to be a small, neat man in his 50s with reading glasses pushed up on his forehead, and he looked less like a gangster than like a man who does your taxes, which in a manner of speaking he does. I told him who I was and who'd hired me, and I watched him not be surprised because Mickey Dane has made a career out of knowing things a few hours early. The mother thinks he didn't take it, Mickey said. Mothers always think that. But I'll tell you something for free, Malone, because it's been itching me. Danny Fiore ran for me for 2 years. He was short once, $11, and he came to me himself, white as an altar cloth, and paid it back out of his own pocket before I'd even counted it. Kids who steal don't do that. So either he grew a different heart over the winter, or somebody's using my satchel to buy me a wrong opinion. Find out which. You've got a week before I have to stop being philosophical about it. You want to know the difference between the movies and the work. In the movies, the bookmaker is the villain. In the work, the bookmaker is frequently the only man in the story doing honest arithmetic. Mickey didn't want Danny's blood. He wanted his ledger to balance. And a ledger that balances on the wrong name is worse to a man like him than the missing money, because money comes back and reputation doesn't. The route told me the rest of the shape of it. Danny's Saturday run was 11 stops, and the satchel went missing somewhere between stop 8, a barber shop on Daly Street, and stop 9, a lunch counter that never saw him. The barber remembered Danny leaving. He also remembered because barbers are the best witnesses God ever put on a corner. A car he didn't know idling across the street, and a man in it he did know but couldn't place. The way you know a face from somewhere it doesn't belong. A heavy man, gray hat, sat with the engine running like a man who'd been told exactly how long he'd have to wait. Now, a stranger doesn't know a collection route. A stranger doesn't know which stop is the last fat one before the satchel gets heavy enough to matter. That's inside knowledge. And inside Mickey's shop, the number of men who knew Danny's Saturday route came to exactly 3. Mickey himself, a phone man named Eddie who'd been home with his leg in a cast since April, and Mickey's counting man, Lou Pardo, who'd sat in that back room for 9 years, adding up other men's luck and drawing a salary that never once had a good day at the track of its own. I got a look at Lou Pardo the next morning coming out of his rooming house, and he was a heavy man, and the hat was gray, and I'll be honest with you, for a minute I almost felt for him. 9 years of counting money that goes into somebody else's pocket will bend a man. The trouble with Lou's plan wasn't the plan. Take the satchel, let the kid carry the blame, wait for Mickey's people or the cops to find Danny and close the account. The trouble was that Danny had seen him, stood at the corner of Daly Street, looked across at a car he'd been trained his whole short career to notice, and recognized the counting man from the back room. And Lou had seen him see it. That's why Danny ran, and that's why Danny was still running. Not from the frame, from the witness list. I found him through the priest, and I'm not going to apologize for how. I sat in the back pew at St. Anna's through a Wednesday evening mass, and afterward I told Father Gutierrez the truth, all of it, including the parts that made me look like exactly what I am, a man who gets paid to find people who mostly don't want it. He heard me out with his hands folded, and then he said, if I knew where such a boy was, I would want to know what happens to him after you find him. Not to his case, to him. I said the only thing that happens to Danny Fiore after I find him is that he stops being findable by worse men. And the father looked at me for a long moment the way they must teach them to in the seminary, like a man reading the fine print on your soul. And then he said the boy came for the early mass on weekdays before the church was properly open and left before it was properly full. Danny had been sleeping in the choir loft. He'd been there 5 days, living on whatever the father pretended not to leave out for him. And when I came up the loft stairs at 6 in the morning, he stood up with a candle snuffer in his fist like it was going to do either of us any good. And I told him his mother had hired me with the onion money, and that took all the fight out of him faster than any cop's badge would have. He told it the way scared kids tell things, out of order and twice. The car across from the barber shop, Lou Pardo's face behind the wheel, the half second where they looked at each other and both of them understood the whole story at once. Danny had done the fastest arithmetic of his life right there on the corner. If he finished the route, the satchel got taken somewhere along it, and it was his word against 9 years of Lou. If he ran, he looked guilty, but he stayed alive long enough for somebody to figure it out. I dropped the satchel down the storm drain on Daly, he said. Corner of the alley. I figured, if nobody's got the money, then the money's still evidence. Is that stupid? Tell me the truth. Is that stupid? Stupid is the wrong word for it, folks. It was half genius and half disaster, the way most decisions made in half a second are. Genius because a satchel in a storm drain has no side in the argument. Disaster because it had rained Tuesday, and I spent one of the less dignified hours of my career flat on my stomach over a storm grate with a coat hanger, fishing for a leather strap in the dark. And I'll spare you the suspense. The satchel was there, wet as a drowned dog, receipts smeared but legible, and every dollar still inside. Lou Pardo never got his hands on it. He'd watched the kid make him, panicked, and driven off, and spent the next 5 days praying the frame would hold without the picture in it. I took the satchel to Mickey Dane, and I set it on his counting table with the water still coming off it. And I told him where it had been, and who put it there, and why. And then I told him what his counting man had been doing across from a barber shop on Daly Street with the engine running. Mickey listened without moving. When I finished, he took his glasses down off his forehead, polished them, and said, "You know what the worst part is? I'd have given Lou a piece of the book if he'd ever once asked. 9 years, and he never asked. Then he thanked me, and he told me Danny's name was Clear, and the way he said Clear had a wall around it. A wall the whole neighborhood would be able to see. I asked him what happened to Lou now, and Mickey looked at me over the glasses and said, he'll get a fairer hearing from me than the kid was going to get from him. And that was as far into that room as I was willing to see. There are doors in this town I knock on and doors I don't, and knowing the difference is why I've lasted. The window at the liquor store turned out to be 2 12-year-olds and a bad throw from half a block, which the beat cop had known since Sunday and hadn't bothered to subtract from Danny's account until I stood in the precinct and made him do the arithmetic out loud. That's the thing about a frame. It doesn't need a carpenter. It just needs a neighborhood in a hurry and a cop who likes his paperwork already filled in. I walked Danny home on a Friday morning. His mother met us on the stoop, and she didn't cry either. This being apparently a family that saves its water. She just held the kid's face in both hands and looked at it like she was checking the satchel, everything still inside. Then she tried to give me $2 more. I told her the case had come in under budget. It hadn't. They never do. But there are expenses a man carries himself, and the look on that stoop paid the balance better than the money would have. Danny doesn't run for Mickey anymore. Mickey himself put a stop to that and put the kid instead onto a cousin who runs a legitimate parts counter in Alhambra. And if you think a bookmaker doing a good deed spoils the story, then you've never lived in a neighborhood. Because down there, the books Mickey keeps aren't only about money. Everything gets written down somewhere. Every favor, every frame, every kid who got the benefit of the doubt an hour before he'd have stopped needing it. The long odds are never the horses, folks. The horses are honest. The long odds are a 19-year-old with the truth against a grown man with 9 years of trust. A mother's $4 against a city that had already made up its mind. That's the bet nobody at the window will take. I take it about once a month, and I'm still ahead, but only barely, and only because every so often the kid really didn't do it. This has been Jack Malone Investigations. In this city, the smart money gets it wrong all the time. Somebody's got to cover the other side.
This has been The Midnight Frequency. The studio goes dark now. Sleep well.